welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. I'm Renee Allen, the host of this podcast, making an episode, the first episode for Mindful Monday, but it's later on Monday. Surprise, surprise. I have ADHD and I didn't make this as early as I would have liked, but I'm going along with my own advice of doing something, even if it's not perfectly aligned with your goal, or you're just doing a bit of it, or maybe you're taking a step toward that. And that step is that eventually on Mondays, I'll have episodes like this ready for you in the morning that you can start your week with it. But even now, the week's not over, the day's not over. And if you get on today, tonight, and depending on what part of the world you're in, and see, oh, this isn't when I normally see it, that's okay. Because we don't always do things consistently, but we can have some kind of consistency. And that's just, might look a little different one time than another. But I want to talk to you today about the mind and about the brain and how they differ and why that matters. Why does that matter for you? How can it help you with your ADHD? How can it help you with your nervous system, how calm you are, how stressed out you are, how productive you are, how kind you are, how you regulate your emotions, all of those things. You can make a change by understanding how that works, how the mind works, how the brain works. And yeah, they're different things. I didn't really think about that, I guess, before I taught yoga, before I really thought of mindful practices. In yoga, we don't say we have a yoga class. I mean, you might say, but you don't say a yoga workout. You might say, I'm teaching a yoga class. But if you're attending a yoga class, you view it more as your yoga practice of your time on your mat. And whether you're just wanting to learn a new pose or get some time without your phone or other disruptions and just have some peace and quiet, or want to create more energy, whatever your goal is, what really happens is you learn a lot about mindfulness and you get some kind of meditation, even though you might not sit cross-legged or however you might sit for a meditation retreat. I've heard of meditation retreats. I've never gone to one. Don't think I ever will because I've heard that they just sit there all day long. And I would have a hard time doing that. And it's not just something, it's not something I'm interested in. But there are other ways to be mindful and to meditate and to notice what's going on in your mind and to quiet your mind. There is a famous quote, and I don't know who said it, but is yoga is the art of quieting the mind. And it's probably a translation, actually, of Sanskrit. Let me see, is the art, of quieting. I'm typing this, but my little screen that shows me the video is blocking what I'm writing, so I'm hoping I don't have it's from the Yoga Sutras. Huh. But it is in Sanskrit. Chitta Vritti Nirodha. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But yeah, we have all these fluctuations in our mind. And raise your hand if that happens a lot for you. When you have ADHD, you have a lot of fluctuations, you have a lot of thoughts, you have a lot of autopilot modes or things that just bounce around. I think of all the thoughts that go through our minds like popcorn. They just keep popping, 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 popping. And with yoga or sometime that you're trying to be quiet or just relax or focus on something, a lot of times you find, I'm not focusing and all these thoughts are coming up, or I'm trying to go to sleep at night. And just noticing that is part of quieting the mind. Just noticing that your mind is doing something that you're not controlling. And I think of it like breathing, like your heartbeat, unless you're in a hospital or something or in a ambulance or something, you're not having an impact on whether your heart is beating or not from day to day. You might do some activity that makes your heart beat faster or see if you can slow it down some way. But breathing, we can hold our breaths. We can just, we can breathe faster, can breathe slower. sometimes we don't think about how we're breathing and it just happens. And sometimes we breathe faster when we're upset or we're stressed or we're surprised. We go, when we I don't know if that's breathing faster. That's kind of like holding your breath. But you could breathe faster if you're having a panic attack or something like that. Some things can make you breathe faster because your nervous system is upset. And and then you can manually slow it down. I don't know why I would manually speed up my breathing. I can't think of any reason, but there probably is one. I don't know if there is actually. But breathing is something that we either do consciously or unconsciously, subconsciously. Even crying, if you think of the breathing that you do when you're crying, it's fascinating because it it is different than our normal breathing. It's something that comes with spilling or expelling those emotions, and some of that is actually a really calming breath. I'll give you an example, even though this is a tangent from what I was going to talk about. I'll give you an example, and that is when you breathe or when you're crying. And I think of this more when I was a child, like if I went and said, "Mom, this happened," or I'm really upset. And as I'm telling the story and as I'm crying really hard, I would do this. It's like a deep, quick, quick, slow, quick, quick, slow. And I don't even know if the microphone picked it up because it tends to not pick up, like it's muting my breathing. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't anymore, but it used to. Anyway, so you do that quick, quick, slow, quick, quick, slow. And and it just happens. You're not trying to do it. But I've noticed when I teach yoga, if I manually do that, it is so calming. It's super relaxing. And I've noticed that when I take a nap, even the shortest of short naps, or even doing shavasana at the end of yoga, which is not a nap, you're not going to sleep, although some people do fall asleep, but you're resting the body, but your mind is still aware, where when you're sleeping, your mind is not aware, although it might take in some information. Sometimes you have sounds that are actually happening, like somebody knocking on a door or someone talking, and that actually is infused into your dream somehow. I have no idea how. But but I notice now that when I wake up or I'm just kind of ending shavasana or whatever, I'll do that. It's just so brief and it's so subtle. It's not as dramatic as when you cry, but it will do that quick, quick, slow. And I mean, it's even quicker than what I'm doing right now. I can't make it do it, but it's so calming. It's like such a stress reliever. And I don't know why. I don't understand the whys of all the things that you can do with breathing or even body movement that calm the nervous system. And some people, talk about the vagus nerve and how it stimulates the vagus nerve and stuff. I am not a big rememberer of things that I learned that are scientific, but I do know what I've seen work and the studies of the results and all those things that calm the nervous system. I don't know how they produce more GABA in the brain or, different things that relieve anxiety or stress, but they do. And they totally change your body and and i- in effect the rest of your day. If your brain, your body, your emotional state has improved, then whatever you do from there out, you're in a better situation. You're starting with almost like a clean slate or something of emotional regulation. You have a better chance of your emotions not being so high and low, and your brain working in a more hopefully functional way, even though you may still have executive function, and I know I still do. But there are times when it's a lot worse. I mentioned before, like when I'm at the store, for some reason, even though I'm comfortable at the store, but there's something with the time limit, like there are people in line behind you, it's time to pay, blah, 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 blah. And the more stimulation that's coming my way, the more my credit cards fall out of my purse. I leave my phone there on the counter. I Last week, did I tell you this? Last week, I was doing 2 orders, one for my daughter, one for me, and I went to do hers at self-checkout and dropped the whole apple juice. It fell and then after I got out to the car, I realized I didn't have my phone, which happened after the apple juice. But just so much going on that I should be doing some calming breathing techniques in the store, I'm realizing. But some things can add stress, and I'm sure I handled it better than I would have, if I wasn't doing all the things that I do that help me be calm throughout the day. So so yeah, so that's that. But let's go back to the brain. I need to put on my glasses for this. Sorry, I just hit the microphone. I never know if it makes a sound, but my apologies if it did. So the brain and the mind are not the same thing. And if you think of the brain as being the physical structure, it is an organ in your body and it contains neurons, neurotransmitters, pathways to help your body work or to ensure that your body works. And the brain can change. They call that neuroplasticity. And the brain can help regulate the nervous system. And the brain can do a lot of things. But the brain is not the mind. The brain is the physical part of your brain. I mean, the physical part of your body that that houses or that maintains all these processes. But the process of what the brain does is actually the mind. So what your brain is doing, so your brain is like the physical structure, like your car, and then the mind is the movement, the traveling, what the car actually does. It's the process. And even in the rest of our bodies, we can think of that like the shoulder girdle. They call it the shoulder girdle if you learn about anatomy, which I did, but that's about all I remember. And the funny thing is I when I did my 500-hour training, you had to do some kind of big project and it took a certain amount of hours. I don't know what it was, but I decided to do the shoulder girdle because I really wanted to learn about anatomy. I knew that was my weak spot was absorbing and retaining information on anatomy. And I understand how it feels and what's safe and what's not, but the actual like which muscle is this? Some of them I remember and a lot of them I don't. So I made that my project even though it wasn't like I was so interested in it, but I had to do a big presentation and everything and knew all the muscles and the joints and everything. And I don't really remember it anymore. But the shoulder girdle, the whole shoulder structure is the structure, what it allows your body to do, the movement, the arm, the twisting, all of that. The twisting is also in your torso. Well, it can be anywhere, but anyway, yeah, they're different things, right? So we think of the mind as a process and your mind has things happened in your mind. You have thoughts arise. Thoughts pop up like popcorn. Thoughts just come and go and information come and go. Emotions come up from your mind. It's sensations, like all of these things are part of this whole system. And many of them are automatic. They just happen. And emotions are also stored in the body. We feel them in our bodies and stuff, but it's all connected. And when you have ADHD and have emotional dysregulation, that goes along with the process of of the mind, right? And which is a process of the brain. But the process is the mind and the brain is the organ. But the brain, you also have executive dysfunction, which is because of how your brain was developed when before you were born, like in the process of neurodevelopment, it's before you're born. In that process, your brain developed, it was constructed in a certain way. And because of that, your brain doesn't function the same as somebody who doesn't have executive dysfunction. Yeehaw with that, huh? And if you haven't, if you don't remember information like I don't, you can go back and listen. I have quite a few episodes about executive dysfunction because it impacts our our lives in lots of ways. But it's interesting because There are a lot of things that happen in your mind that affect your mood, that affect your emotions, that affect how you view the world or people or a situation. And you can change that if you want. You can have troubling thoughts. You can have a lot of things distract you, and you can change that if you want. You can have a mindset of, I'm upset. I'm, blah, blah," I mean, that's emotions, but it's also a strong belief or like, this is, I'm coming in here. I'm going to be angry. And you can change that mindset if you want, right? And you might think, I can't control some of these things. And maybe there are some that are going to be a lot harder to control than others. And you don't have to change every mindset. But as you start to notice the patterns in your brain and your thoughts that come up, and when you're on autopilot, which is the majority of the time because our brains can't work in a conscious way all the time, it would be exhausting. And even our body, with breathing, that's mostly subconscious. And yet we can slow our breathing. We can affect the body. We can affect our moods. We can take the stress out. We can actually take out physical pain. And I'm not making claims of you can cure pain, but if you have tension, a lot of tension in your back, your shoulders, your neck, or whatever, you can reduce that through letting go in the mind or just noticing with your mind what's happening in your mind and noticing in your mind what's happening in your body and then having methods or tools or just simplicity of let me see if it's coming in and up and that's tension. I'm going to let it soften and go kind of out and kind of dissipate. And it's not easy to do when you're not used to doing it, especially if you don't even know you're doing it. I used to be there. And once you get used to it, and that's where I think of a yoga practice, is a yoga practice is an opportunity to tune into my body, to notice how things feel when I do it, and whether I'm going into a pose, staying there, going out, noticing my breathing, slowing my breathing, all those things that I can do while I'm doing yoga. It gives me not only the opportunity to do it during that hour or 90 minutes or however long the class is, but it gets me into a pattern of noticing that. And then during the day, I'm noticing it. In the morning when I'm at the store, I didn't notice it at the store that day. But I did end up really calm. I'm trying to think, was that the same night? No, it wasn't the same night. I also locked my keys in the car last week. Yeah, this is why I like doing delivery, store delivery, because so many things happen at the store. What is that? I don't know. I don't know. It's hard when you don't have success in a certain situation. It makes it hard to believe that that's going to change, but it can. It can. So, so our thoughts are often not intentional, but we can intentionally put new thoughts in. So, one way that I like practiced this when I first started learning I could do this is I would be in a yoga class and looking around causes you to compare. Also makes it so you don't balance as well. And so that's one of the things they tell you, like set your gaze and they call it drishti, where you just look at something and that becomes your spot. And I don't know if it's like this for a lot of people with ADHD, but I've always done this where, like if you're a daydreamer or you get lost in your thoughts, is I could look at this wall over here and just notice the paint and the shape, and there's a little bit of texture, and then I see the little kind of streaks that come down. I mean, it's more like they took, something and made some kind of um, texture, but I think, that kind of looks like a comet or clouds with just rain pouring down, but kind of sideways rain. So my imagination likes to do things like that. And that would even be better in a yoga class because you're setting your gaze. So I'm, doing a twist or something and I'm looking at that. But a lot of times I would just kind of like zone out where I'm looking at some shape and then that shape is the only thing I see. And it becomes a nothing, but it makes it so I'm not really thinking about anything else because I'm focusing on that one spot. And it helps quiet your mind. That you can do that. So let's say you're in a class, but let's say I have to give you real life experiences because you might not be in a yoga class. Let's say you're in traffic Let's say you're just at a stoplight and the stoplight is taking forever, and you're even the first person at the green arrow light where you're going to turn left, and the other people are going by and they're in the green, to your right, and you're thinking, so did I miss the green arrow? I don't think I did, because they started going after you got there, and then you don't get to go that time, but then the other people across traffic gets to go. And so you're sitting there and you're thinking, I need to be there. Like I was planning to get there. I didn't leave as early as I wanted to and everything. And you can notice what's helpful. Like if you're getting stressed out, if you're getting a little more angry, you have other people in the car, or you just feeling tension in your body or whatever. And you can make that few moments, that however many minutes, and sometimes stoplights can take more than a few minutes, but you can make those more pleasant by noticing your thoughts and noticing if they're helpful. And maybe it's good to notice, like kind of the patterns, like, did I miss a light? I was just in Arizona and their light system is so different. I was completely confused. I came up to one that I thought was a four-way stop and it was a blinking yellow. And then I thought, I guess it's time to go. And then it went red. And I'm like, what? And then I was kind of out and I had to back up. And then it turned like to another blinking something. And it became a four-way stop. I don't know. If you live in Arizona, tell me, explain this to me. But I thought they really need to explain this because I'm coming up here. This is kind of dangerous for me to come up and not understand your system. But I did kind of get a kick out of it, and I did stay positive. And it's important to stay positive. In fact, I'm going to make an episode about road rage and avoiding it, or just dealing with people who have road rage because it's not it's not pleasant. It can be stressful. But if you're just stressed because you need to get somewhere and the lights taking a long time, you can say, well, it's good that I have enough gas. You can think of all the positive things, right? Because there are positive things. I have a car that works. Not all of my cars work. And be grateful for those things. So just feeling a little gratitude can help calm your nervous system. Also, slowing your breathing. And I have the best technique, the breathing technique for stoplights. It's called Ujjayi breath. I'll teach it in another episode. I feel like I have to do it where I probably have to use a different microphone where you can actually hear my breathing. But I'll do that too. But anyway, just noticing what's going on in your mind and if it's helpful, if it's solving anything. And one of my favorite things to do when I'm start to get stressed about being late. I mean, if it's a doctor's appointment, it's one thing, but like you don't want to miss a doctor's appointment, but let's just say it's a social gathering or something, is I tell myself instead of spending the 15 minutes that it takes to drive there, thinking about all the reactions of people when I get there, which may or may not happen, but instead of thinking about that, I think they don't even know about it yet. Like I am stressing about something that hasn't happened yet. And it might happen, but it's not happening right now because, like it's a quarter till. They don't even know that I'm not there yet. And maybe I'm driving up right then. And then, maybe at that actual time, then I can, then I can feel like it's normal. That's something that really helped me is to play little games like that. Like I'm worrying about something that hasn't happened. Or if you can change the outcome, like let's say you're going to a doctor's appointment, the traffic's a little slower, you didn't get out the door, couldn't find your phone, whatever it was. I like to have the doctor's number in my phone where I can just call pretty easily, the contact number or whatever, and just call and say, I'm on my way to my appointment. Looks like I'm going to get there 5 minutes after. Just wanted to let you know. Most of the time they have a little buffer because they make us wait anyway. But there are days that they might say, oh, that you're the last appointment of the day. And then you turn around and go home or, thanks for letting us know. Actually, that's never happened. But I did call once and it was the last appointment of the day. And I learned never to make a doctor's appointment on a Friday afternoon when there could be traffic because they actually did cancel one by the time I got there. But I did call him. It's just that the traffic got worse and worse. But feeling like you're doing something about it can help. It really can. Oh my goodness. Okay, intentional thoughts versus non-intentional thoughts. How many non-intentional thoughts do you have a day? Probably a ton. And and they may even be disruptive to you being able to focus, thinking of 20 things that have equal importance that you should be doing right now or you wish you could be doing. And that you have to give yourself new thoughts. You have to say things like, I can't do all of them right now, but I can do this and do that and try to tell the other thoughts to go away. Oh, so your brain can notice the mind. So that's where mindfulness comes in. This is how they come. The prefrontal cortex helps with self awareness and other things. So I'll just talk about self awareness. And when you notice I'm spiraling, or my body feels tense, or I have so many thoughts that are going on right now, and it's just making me feel worse, or I'm trying to listen to this person talk and I have 1,000 other thoughts going on in my mind. When you notice the thoughts that are happening and they weren't intentional thoughts, then you're actually finding some power in the situation. You're finding some control. And you should never feel bad that your brain is just kind of, what do they call it? The monkey mind in yoga. Like it's just jumping all over the place. You shouldn't feel guilty for not listening to your friend talk to you, because that's what brains do sometimes. They just can't focus all the time. And when you notice all these thoughts that are going on, then as you practice this, the more you do it, that neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to learn from the past and have new ways. And it doesn't mean that you'll never have a lot of thoughts in your mind, but you may do better at it, or you might notice sooner that your mind is wandering, and that you've just been in this thought loop of your own. Because it's, at least for me, and I've seen with a lot of people with ADHD, is it's really nice to make connections. So if somebody's talking to you, or you're listening to a presentation, or you're in a class or something, the teacher's telling a story, and you're just making all these connections like, oh, yeah, me too. That happened with me too. And when you're in a conversation with a friend, you might be able to jump in and out with that. I had that happen too. But some friends don't enjoy that as much, and they might think you're interrupting or something like that. Or maybe it's not as appropriate and you have a little more control of not interrupting, or, as I call it, participating as actively. But you might, without even thinking about it, right? Because it's an automated thing. You might be just making these connections and then remembering some story, sometime that happened to you, or that you have a friend. And what can happen is, when you're talking to somebody and you say, "Oh, yeah, I know that happened to me too," or "That happened to my mom," or whatever it is, sometimes the other person interprets it as you one-upping them or not having compassion for them, because it's downplaying it, because that situation might not sound as intense as theirs or whatever. Like, there's lots of things that can happen with that. But even if it's just happening in your own mind, it can make it so you're just not listening anymore. And then they ask you a question and you don't even answer it. Or you say, yeah, because you didn't want them to know. And then that happens with my kids sometimes. And then they're like, Mom, I asked you this. And I think, oh, and not only is my hearing bad, but because I wasn't really listening, like I missed a lot of the question, or I misinterpreted, like, even where they were in that conversation. So yeah, noticing, using your brain to notice what's going on in your mind, and then consciously creating a new thought or a change in that. And if you can't send a new thought in, you can just do things to notice what's happening in your body, just to help you not feel the stress so much, help you not just be so, um, what do they call it when you're like an active participant in the situation? Sometimes it's too much to be taking everything in that we think about, or to get emotionally invested, I guess is what it is. And sometimes you have to just think, I do care about this, but right now I can't just keep thinking about it. And I can just send this away till later. And that's what I do a lot in yoga classes is I notice I'm there for a certain purpose. I'm there to go, this is if I'm taking the class, not if I'm teaching. But if I'm there to take a class, I'm there to just get some calming to my nervous system, to maybe enjoy moving my body and that sort of thing, but really just to relieve stress and to let go. And if I'm going in there and thinking about something else that's going on in the room or my impact on the person right next to me, I hope I'm not blocking this, or I was a little bit late, I hope the teacher doesn't mind, or whatever it is. I hope my car is okay out in the parking lot. I just heard a car alarm. Whatever those things that are going on, it's disrupting my whole purpose for being there. And when I notice that, I think, is this thought helpful right now? If it's not, send it away. Like, save it for later. Or hopefully it never comes back. Do I really need to keep thinking about this? And feeling like you have that ability is really, really helpful. It doesn't always happen magically. It doesn't always happen forever. If you have some thought of, somebody, not some thought, but, like repetitive thoughts, somebody hurt your feelings and you just keep reliving that conversation or something. Maybe you can analyze it and come out feeling better. But a lot of times we just kind of spiral with it. And sometimes just saying, I just got to let this go for now, and I'll think about it later. I can deal with that later. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's really helpful. So let's see where I am here. How many minutes have I been on? Dun, 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 dun. 32. That's probably enough for a mindful Monday. Yeah. The little things that you can check. What thoughts are going on? Are they swirling about? I just think of, like the whoosh, some kind of tumbling tumbleweed or a tornado or something, depending on if they're frolicking like a tumbleweed or spiraling out of control. And then what's your body doing? Is it exciting to think about it? I mean, sometimes we have thoughts that are exciting, right? Like that, things that you're looking forward to. That could be fun too. Not all thoughts are disruptive because they're bad thoughts. And also, sometimes thoughts will come into your mind that are important and you can think about them longer if you want, even if it doesn't have anything to do with what you're doing. I've found that some of my quietest times when I'm trying to be quiet, I'll have thoughts that come up that are really important. And I feel like that's happening because my brain isn't so clogged up with everything else that it can actually receive or remember that. If you've ever been, going to sleep at night, you're almost asleep, and then you think, oh, I never answered that text. And this is the third night that I've done this. I got to do it tomorrow, but you don't want to wait, turn on the lights. So you don't want to do it right now. You don't want to get your phone and make it, give you that blue light and stuff. But I think that happens because our brains are finally relaxed and they're not overburdened. Yeah. So you can notice the thought. You can look at it and see it for what it is. You can categorize it if you want, but I just like to say, is it helpful right now? Is it something I could save for later? Is it something I could just send away either now or forever? And if it's a thought that you don't want to forget and you do have paper and pen, that might, be simple just to write yourself a quick note. I have had people come to my yoga classes with a journal that will write things down. And I haven't done that, but I think that would be really helpful. I've done that in classes. Like if you have something, just take notes, even if it's just writing down things that you never look at again. It can help your brain just to let go of what's happening, and then you're not worried that you're going to forget it. Okay. I probably shared with you before, but, um, thinking of your thoughts as like clouds in the sky, kind of staring up at the sky, laying down on the ground. If you're younger and you haven't done that before, and I just say if you're younger because I feel like before technology, we did a lot more of that, like lay down on the grass, or I get out of a swimming pool and lay on the cement on a towel, look up at the sky, or just sit with friends, lay down. I don't know. I like laying down a lot on on the floor. I guess that's what got me to like yoga. You get to do that a lot, but you just notice, you're looking up in the sky, so you're looking at your mind, and your thoughts are your clouds, which are literally what they show you in cartoons, right? And then you just see those clouds and see, do I want to spend time looking at that cloud, or do I want to just notice it, and instead of watching the cloud go by, I actually can manually push that cloud away when it's my thought. Oh my goodness. I think that's going to be it for right now because, as usual, I'm thirsty and my mute button's farther away than I want it to be. But thank you so much for being here. I will be back. I know I'm supposed to give you some little thing at the end to do, but my mind is blank, as Meg Ryan says in You've Got Mail. She types it out as she says it. It's one of my favorite parts. So she looks around like, what word do I use for my mind is blank? Oh, which, it is blank while she's saying that. So, oh, I love Meg Ryan. I love the Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks movies. And that's it for today. Do the things, if you haven't left a review or shared my podcast with a friend or mentioned it on any social media you're on. Sometimes people say, can you think of a podcast you can recommend? Recommend my podcast. I'd love that. If you like listening, I would hope that maybe you know at least a few people that might like to listen to. If not, no pressure, but that's me. I'm not a pressure person, but please do it anyway. Oh, yeah. It's not just the people pleaser, it's also the empathetic part of me. I don't want to push anybody. So, that's how I am. But thanks for being here. I will be back again. Bye. Open windows, broken shadows. Frozen dreams are left for tomorrow. Without a cause, no time for a pause. The silence of sound has yet been found, but not by me. Help other women find the show. Rate, review, share with someone you know. Help other women find the show. Rate, review, share with someone you know. Help other women find my show. Rate, review, share with someone you know. Thank you so much.